as I was looking out in the money world, and I was starting to read a lot of the traditional money books, there's some good stuff there, but it's kind of all the same thing. This is how you pay down debt. This is how you save. This is how you invest, right? And it was said in such a tough love, like, this is how you do it, and that didn't work for me. It was like, wait a second, I don't need to follow your path because I'm a bit rebellious. And I was like, what's my path? Or how do I bring all of the qualities that I know around play and creativity and deeper meaning and sacredness, right?
This is Therapist Clubhouse, a podcast for private practice entrepreneurs. I'm Annie Schuessler. This week, I'm talking to Bari Tessler, a private practice entrepreneur in Boulder, Colorado. Listen as Bari dives into how she created her popular year-long program, The Art of Money, and the twists and turns of her entrepreneurial journey. Welcome, Bari. Thank you so much for being on Therapist Clubhouse.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Me too. So I want to talk to you about your entrepreneurial journey. You're a financial therapist, and you have a business model that's centered around your year-long Art of Money program, which I was a participant of and absolutely loved. And you've got hundreds of participants from around the world every year. So when you studied to become a therapist, would you have ever imagined that you'd build a program like this?
No way. When I was training to be a therapist in my 20s, I was working in the mental health field. I was working in hospice, doing bereavement work and overnight care. And I was leading authentic movement groups. And my only options that I could see at that time were to continue to work in the mental health field. And I was making $11 an hour, and even when I got the master's, they didn't bump me up in pay, which I was, furious about. It was like, what? I don't have enough points. I don't understand your system, And so it was either stay in the mental health field or start a private practice. And I was, when I finally finished everything, and we had to write a 150-page thesis back then. So that took me, I had to go on a little sabbatical from work for 3 months to actually lock myself in a room and eat a lot of chocolate to finish that. Okay. So, but at that time, really, those were my only two options. So I was in my 20s, and starting a private practice, I didn't feel ready for. I didn't feel mature enough. I didn't feel, I was ready. I also didn't want to sit with, 8 clients a day.
Yeah.
I just knew that wasn't right for me, but I had no clue that there was any other options, anything else out there. I did not know how I was going to create a livelihood based on, my training, my skill sets, my gifts, what I'm really good at, what I'm not good at, all of it, So no, this all unfolded by me following all of these little baby steps and, taking a break from the mental health field and taking a little job in an accounting department that I thought would last 3 months, and it lasted 2 years. And, and everyone thought I was taking they didn't know what was going on with me. This is an odd detour, but I know this is right. And I'm just going to follow the trail. And then I wound up, having a whole bookkeeping business for a few years. I can, talk about any of this more, but then I, started slowly doing my own bookkeeping, doing bookkeeping training on QuickBooks for other people, started integrating all of my training as a therapist with all of these tools and systems in the language of money that I was learning and surprising myself with, because it was completely left out of my graduate program. Any discussion about money.
Yeah.
We studied and talked about every other topic and theme, and this was completely left out. So I just, at one point, started to integrate these two fields and started teaching in very small, tiny groups of 10 people over and over and over for many years. And then it grew to 20 people, and then so on. And so it has been as small, incremental steps all the way. And then there's certainly been a few leaps, some leaps along the way. I never envisioned this.
It's so, I'm sorry, I think it's so helpful for people to know this, because someone could look at you now and think like, okay, so clearly, like, she just absolutely was meant for this and it was clear all along. And like, that's not how it works, right? That you worked really hard. You started small, you went step by step and you grew it from the ground up.
Yes. Yes.
The kind of one relationship at a time. And now it gets to be maybe hundreds of relationships at a time, but it started, one person at a time.
One person at a time. And it also, at some point I realized that I couldn't work in the mental health field, so I had to like X out that option. I realized I can't work for someone else, that I have to be my own boss, that I'm not a good employee. So that was a huge revelation, so there was that. And then there was that moment of, okay, I need to learn everything I can about business and entrepreneurship. And suddenly I realized I came from an entrepreneurial family. My parents were in real estate, but somehow I'd never quite gotten that because it took me until the age of 32, to realize, oh, I need to be my own boss. I need to be an entrepreneur. So that was another thing that I had to learn. And, at that, just meet every single person that I could, study how everyone did business, how they did it, and then create my own version of all of that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's really interesting, Bari. I have something kind of similar myself where there's very small business in my family background, which I completely had not embraced until more recently realizing, okay, so this is part of me and this is something that I can embrace and really step into.
Yeah. It was amazing that I didn't notice, even though I was steeped in the ups and downs of entrepreneurial life.
Yeah.
And that, I finally realized, oh, it's in my blood, it's in there, or I just witnessed it so much. And it's really the only path for me. My husband goes in and out of working for himself and then working for companies, working for himself. And, I can't say never, but no, I don't think I ever will.
Yeah.
I think I can actually really say that.
Yeah. And there's so much that I want therapists to learn from you, but one big thing that I find profound is this idea that we need to bring our bodies into our relationships with money. So if you were to just share one thing about that or a couple things about that, what would you want therapists to think about?
Well, I have to go back a little bit just to say why I stepped into training as a somatic therapist. And for me, I asked to go to therapy when I was 16 years old. I asked my parents if I could go see a therapist. And they said yes. And then they sent me to a male therapist who did talk therapy. Mm-hmm. And, that was all they knew. And so I went to that. And as a 16-year-old girl, just a lot of my issues were with men and boys and the masculine and, and I wound up being able to just continue to play a lot of games with words. And, with talking, it was a beginning, it got me in the room and it just wasn't the right modality for me. I needed something else, or I needed something in addition to talking. Right. Mm-hmm. And so, but that's all I knew. I went to a few talk therapists, but at the same time, I would go into my room as a teenager and blast music and dance all the different emotions that I was feeling, anger and sadness and, all of it. And then I'd be able to come out of my room. And after I moved the emotions, then I could articulate to myself first and then my parents what the heck was going on with me, Yeah. So I had some sense. I grew up as a dancer, that movement was a channel for me. Movement was a doorway for me to help me understand myself better and move big emotions and move energy, right? Mm-hmm. And so, in my early 20s, I discovered authentic movement. First I was living in Israel, and that's when I was running one day on a kibbutz and thought that I had this flash of inspiration. And I realized, I grew up as a dancer. I'm really into psychotherapy. I'm going to blend these two together. I'm going to be a dance therapist. And I thought I made up a whole new field, Mm-hmm. I didn't make up anything. But when I got to Jerusalem, I learned that there was graduate programs in somatic psychology and dance movement therapy. So that's why I, went to Naropa University in Boulder, Colorado to study in the somatic department. And for me, learning how to listen to my body and its messages after overriding my body and its messages for so many years, especially, as a girl, especially as a teenage girl, especially as a young woman, to be able to learn how to trust my body, read its messages, interpret them, understand what my sensations were, feelings were in the moment, because I always, I am a big feeler. I have a lot of emotions and I don't really expect them to go away. Sure, the degree of them has shifted, but they still come up. So for me, I just needed tools on how to work with my body and all the different big feelings and sensations that came up, right? And so that was, I feel like that's what saved me. I mean, I know that's really strong language, but those were the essential tools that have helped me in my parenting, in my marriage of 17 years, as a parent I have a 9-year-old son, in how I grew my business and how I created the methodology. So when I was going to create a beginning methodology to help people have a healthy relationship to money, have a conscious relationship to money, on and on, I knew that I had to bring all the tools that I learned in my 20s to my methodology and to how I grew my business. And because, as I was looking out in the money world, and I was starting to read a lot of the traditional money books, there's some good stuff there, but it's kind of all the same thing. This is how you pay down debt. This is how you save. This is how you invest, right? And everyone would, and it was said in such a tough love, like, this is how you do it, and that didn't work for me. It was like, wait a second, I don't need to follow your path, because I'm a bit rebellious. And so I was like, what's my path? Or how do I bring all of the qualities that I know around play and creativity and deeper meaning and sacredness, right, into it? So for me, what was missing in all the traditional money management teachings or books was our emotions around money. And for so many of us, money is so emotional, or we project so much onto it. And just what are our beliefs and patterns, and what is our money psychology? And so for me, the doorway, the baby steps into understanding what our money story is and what our money beliefs and what our money patterns are, is by learning how to check in with our bodies, listen to our bodies, check in on a physical level, sensation level, emotional level, breath level, and to do it during all of these daily money interactions that we have when we're going online to look at our balances, when we're going to our spouse or partner to have a money conversation, when we're going to discuss our fees with our clients, and on and on, So for me, money, I like to approach it on a practical, emotional, psychological, and spiritual level, right? And so bringing in the body just really helps me understand the emotional level and the psychological level, and, gives me tools on how to work with myself. And then these have been essential teachings that I've brought to the community for years. And so many of them feel as though they can't even get to the numbers and look at their numbers or their patterns in their numbers or learn a bookkeeping system until they get a handle on what their big emotions are, and learning how to calm themselves down, calm their nervous system down, understand just what's all happening in their body in the heat of the moment, in the middle of the car dealership when we're going to, buy a car, and all of a sudden, I told a story once where I started hyperventilating, in the car dealership because we were making a medium price money decision. And that still felt challenging for me. And I knew what was happening. Oh, I'm hyperventilating. Oh, I need to go into the bathroom and do a little body check-in. Yeah. And as soon as I did that, it calmed me down. It allowed me to see what my next steps were, where I need to have a little money date and ask a series of questions, with my husband in the car dealership so we can make the best decision. So again, because I see money on a practical, emotional, psychological, and spiritual level, we can't leave out the emotions. And most of us were not given a financial education and a, emotional intelligence. Like I want it, these tracks are side by side. They're equally as important and equally left out as we were growing up.
And Bari, I think it's such, I mean, you know this, it's such a missing piece of the puzzle for so many of us that, you know, I see a lot of therapists get stuck. And the way through, like stuck with money, and the way through is not usually to like push through. It just doesn't work. It shuts people down, and it just stops them in their tracks. So I really feel like this is such a gift, this idea of slowing down, bringing in all parts of yourself. And I think that's the only way to really move forward.
And, you know, the other piece here is what you're already naming is that we need to be bringing in more compassion and love and gentleness. And for me, that is through checking in with the body and being with all the emotions, you know, that are coming up. And, you know, as therapists, we were all taught to, you know, not want money or strive for money, or, you know, we're supposed to just do our good work and somehow we're going to be paid and compensated for that. Well, you know, this is an area that we have to understand and learn and get savvy about, you know. But yes, we have to come at it from a gentle and loving and compassionate place and realize that most of us, this was a left out piece in our education. And then on top of that, as we were trained as therapists, we studied every topic to work with our clients, except for money. And so we have yet to, you know, we know our food story and our sex story and our intimacy story and on and on and on. And we've left out the money work.
It's so true. Yeah. And I want to dive into something that you call money Cohens. You shared a story on your podcast about how your business radically changed when you had your son 9 years ago. And you realized that because of recovering from labor complications and being a new parent and all of that, that you were going to need to drastically change your business from 40 to 60 hour weeks down to 10. And instead of leading a whole team of bookkeeper trainers, as you had been, you were going to go solo again. And I'm kind of connecting the dots that is part of what led to your current business model. What was it like in that moment of knowing that you were facing this big crossroads?
So for me, a money Cohen is, the Cohen term concept comes from the Buddhist tradition. And for me, it's simply, it's a riddle. It's a nut to crack. And, in the Buddhist tradition, they go off and it's a riddle. It's questions that they need to sit with and answer on their own. And I borrowed that term and put the word money next to it because I started seeing, after doing this work for many, many years, that we all hit junctures, we all hit crossroads, or we all hit moments where we have a riddle that we can't figure out. It's an issue, it's a problem, it's a nut to crack. And some of these can get answered, within a day, or within a few days. Some take weeks to resolve, some takes months, and some takes a year or two, And we all have them. And for me, I was just noticing in the past when we would all hit these places, it just felt like a brick wall. We're never going to get through it. We can't see any options, and we feel so stuck, right? And in a long life, in the ebbs and flows of a life, we're going to hit stuck places, right? Where we don't know our way around, or we can't see the door handle, and on and on. So just for me, naming it Money Cohen and bringing that concept to the community and telling my own stories about it, I've realized has really helped other folks just more gently name, I'm in a Money Cohen. That's all it is,
Love that.
To everyone.
Yeah. And it's not like, your plan, or, my plan was wrong. It's like, we're in a time of change. Something came up. Yeah. Exactly. But we could plan so much and then life happens, right? Yeah. So at this crossroads 9 years ago, what led up to that was 7 years of growth. So I was in my 30s. I was with my husband, then boyfriend at the time, but we didn't have a child, and I had tons of energy in my 30s and, was working 40 to 60 hours a week. I started my business, my work at 32.
And so for 7 years, or, 6, 7 years, just grew. And, 3 years in, that's when women were knocking on my door saying, I want to be on your team. And I was like, what team are you talking about? Oh, and so that's when I started adding in bookkeeping trainers and financial coaches under my umbrella. We were growing. And these were years where we were earning more and saving more and giving more, right? Mm-hmm. And then at the age of 38, I woke up and changed my mind about not wanting to have kids. And I literally just woke up in my 38th year and realized the only next step on my path was to have a son named Noah.
Wow.
That he was coming through. Yeah. I've been with my husband almost 7 years. We had signed on the invisible line, no kids. He was like, what are you doing? And I tried to drop seeds all year. He wasn't picking them up. And then at the very end of the year, I said, this is happening. I want to do it with you, let's go to therapy. And we found a wonderful Israeli therapist in Santa Cruz. And I think it was 6 weeks of therapy. That was it. And I sat there quietly, which is very unusual for me when I want something, but this was more, I knew this was going to happen. And so I sat quiet and just watched my husband do really deep, painful and beautiful work around his own father. And then we made it through that and came to a yes. Okay. And, I always say in any journey, there are going to be hopefully beautiful, easeful moments. And then there's going to be painful, challenging moments. This is just what happens, right? So we got the beautiful, easeful moments at the beginning. We conceived Noah on the very first try. Yeah, he was really ready.
He was ready to come.
He was coming, and I had overall a really nice, good, happy pregnancy. But then we went to 42 weeks, and I was huge and happy, like a big bear, still sleeping on my back, which is really unusual. And my son didn't want to come out, and so we had a big complication in our labor. And he's healthy. He came out fine. And I feel incredibly lucky and blessed. I don't even know what the words are, to describe this. But he came out healthy after, my placenta abrupted in the middle of my labor. But we had just made it to the hospital. And I made the call after 12 hours at home to put on my sundress and to tell everyone, my midwife and my husband were going to the hospital. So we got there just in time, and then my placenta abrupted, and he came out healthy, but I was in huge recovery. It took me down, and so I had assumed that we'd cross the bridge and I'd have my son and I would continue on my merry way. I had a business partner. I had my team of bookkeeping trainers and coaches, and we just continue. And that's not what happened. No, number one, I needed recovery time. Number two, I was so blissed out as a new mama that I was like crazily fully present every second, day and night. My son didn't sleep for more than 3 hours, so I wasn't sleeping, and I was also just blissed out. So what happened in the first 4 months was that all of a sudden I realized everything's changing and everything needs to change and I need to ask new questions. And wow, I think I need to let go of my business partner and my entire team. And I think I need to go back to a one-woman show, and I need to simplify because I can't work 40 to 60 hours a week. I don't even know if I can work 10 hours a week. So in that Money Cohen moment, I ask new and different questions that I've never asked before. And the questions were, what can I do in 10 hours that I love to do the most, that is the most lucrative, and that I can do while I'm crazily sleep deprived, recovering, and blissed out?
I just love how badass this is, that you were just like, yeah, that's what's going to happen.
Again, to the outside world, everyone's like, what the heck are you doing? Right. You've been growing. And aren't we supposed to grow every year? And no, that's, that was one of the biggest lessons. It was radical. Yeah, I'm going to simplify and I'm going to let go of everything, because other women do continue their businesses, and they have people who write their blog posts, and, their team continues. And that wasn't what was right. And when I asked the questions and listened, it was really, really clear. And my business partner and I parted ways in the best way that we could. We're still friends. I still refer to her. I let go of my team. We had 2 assistants, let go of them. And, I moved into a new phase. And for 2 years, personally, we had to really simplify in our finances, because I went from, with the whole team, we were making a really healthy 6-figure income. And I went back to one woman show, 10 hours, and I went below 6 figures again. But everything was right about it. I needed to recover and be blissed out with my son and my only child. I had him 3 months before my 40th birthday. And that's what I did for 2 years. And I taught probably 2 groups of 40 to 50 students online, all audio, so no one could see my crazy bun, my crazy haircut, and that I was so out of my mind, sleep deprived. And I did my best, and that's what I could do. And in those 10 hours, and also what happened was my ability to say no and my healthy boundaries became crystal clear. So I said, no to everything, no to tea dates, no to pick my brain dates, no to, oh, you want to talk to me about your money stuff? No, I just said no to everything, because I had these 10 hours a week and I needed to bring in money during that time and teach my groups. And the rest of the time was with my son.
And that was what you needed to say yes to.
And that's what I needed to say yes to. And that was crystal clear. So everything else was no. And then I also learned how to work more efficiently and more productively in those 10 hours than I had ever worked before in maybe, 20, 30, And then it was a few years later, to complete the story, at 2 years old, and all of a sudden I was like, I'm ready for a little bit more. And we created a home study program. And then when Noah was 3, I started using that home study program with a 3-month online coaching program. And then Noah was getting ready to, he was turning 3 to 4. And all of a sudden I was sleeping. It took 3 years, and then we started sleeping. And I was like, wow, I have energy now. And I was slowly starting to bump up my hours from 10 to 12 to 15, to 20. And then all of a sudden, at the end of 1 year, I realized I can't keep registering for these 3-month programs, because it felt like where in the past I would just open up my program, 10 people would join, that would be it. And I did that over and over and over. And then here I was, and it felt like a huge push to get 40 to 50 people in the room. And I didn't know what was going on. And so I started asking new and different questions. I felt like, okay, I'm in a new money Cohen, right? Yeah. And this isn't working. How can I shift it? It feels too push, masculine. Can I even shift the energy of my program and work and openings and registration? What does that even mean and look like? And I just started asking different questions. And the answer I got was, I'm heading into my 44th year. My son is going to turn 4. Or my son just turned 4, and then I'm stepping into my 44th year. I'm ready for a year-long program. I felt I had matured. I felt I had been doing this work long enough. I felt my community was ready. And then I did a few radical things, which was I looked at my price points, and I realized I was charging more in the middle range. For a 3-month class, it was somewhere between $550 and $700. And I got this nudge to lower my price point, to make it more accessible. And so I shifted to $88 a month, which was way more accessible for people on a monthly basis. Overall, it's $1,056 for the year. So it's more overall, but they get so much more content. I was saying I wanted to be more generous than I ever have been with my content. And I needed the model to work for my life and my health and my family and all of that. And so I shifted my business model and I said, I'm going to open up a year-long program. Hopefully I'll get a lot more people. I had a sense it was time. I felt ready, and I lowered the price point. And then there are probably a few other things that I can't think of right now. Opened up the year-long program with me as the main guide, with many guest teachers, with 12 modules, a private Facebook group that I can go in and out of whenever I could go in at 12 o'clock at night if I wanted, or 3 in the middle of the day after my son was napping, and we opened up the program and we got 320 students the first year. And so it was a huge leap, to go from struggling to get 40 to 50 students to 320 students. And it has become my favorite teaching model because I can be the most generous with all of my content. And it's the most lucrative business model as well. And the best fit for time and energy and family and health and all of that.
And there's so much that I've learned from your business model. One thing that I do now is the idea of having your content forever. So like when someone takes my course, just like when they do the Art of Money, like they get to go through it as many times on their own as they want to. And I think that's so, whenever someone forgets that and then they ask me like, how long do I have this content for? And I say forever, they just get so relieved.
They do. We have the same experience. And people somehow don't read that detail. And then when they're like, oh, should I download everything before we end? And we say, no, you've access forever for as long as I'm doing this work, which I foresee for a long time. And it is a way to be generous. It's just another way to be really generous.
And it works with how people actually live, right? Where you go through important content one time, but then you might come back to it with a new, like let's say with a new money Cohen, you want to come back to the same work again. So it's wonderful.
Yeah. And we do layers of this work, right? Every year and go deeper and deeper. And, but this whole story is based on that I've probably had 5 different business models over the last 16 plus years. And that when I had my son, that simple business model phase, where I was only working 10 hours and did the best I could in those 10 hours. And that was really essential for me to then a few years down the road, be able to continue to expand my hours. And then I had learned how to work so efficiently in those 10 hours. So then when I moved to 10, it was like, wow, 20, it was like, wow, look what I can do here. And wound up being able to leverage skill set, energy, time, maturity, and take a big leap, but so that don't be afraid. If you hit a crossroad where you feel in your bones and your body that the right next step is to simplify, and whatever your version is of going back to a one-woman show for a few years, that was really so important to me. Instead of we always have to grow and earn more and save more and give more, this was the opposite, of that. And in a long life, it's so important that we each listen to our own timing and pacing and what's really right.
Beautiful. And Bari, if you could time travel to the time where you started your business, maybe right as you're going into business for yourself, what would you tell the Bari of that time?
I think I kind of just said it, but I would just give her lots of gentle, like, hang in there, keep going, just keep going, keep taking these baby steps, keep taking moments of rest breaks in nature, and then come back to your to-do list, and take more steps, but just really trust your own, as I just said, trust your own pacing and timing. And it's all going to work out in the right timing for you. And that this is just a long journey, ups and downs, and please enjoy as much of this beginning challenging phase as you can, because you will get through this. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And will you help me with a question that we got from a listener?
Sure.
Listener question.
Okay, so this person says, I left a position at a fantastic agency to focus full-time on private practice. This move has been fantastic, and I love the work I do in my practice. I'm recognizing, however, that just about all of my practice reflects privilege, and this has been difficult to sit with. I keep 2 sliding scale spaces, which is great and works for me, and perhaps that's the answer to my own question. But I'm struggling with navigating the feelings of wanting to build a thriving and meaningful practice while also having this pull to be of service to those that cannot afford my fee and or are in a community that is not initially supportive of mental health services, aka not just primarily white, high SES families who come to me willingly without stigma regarding therapy. It's really the pull between wanting to take care of myself and wanting to tend to the needs of the greater world. Any advice?
Yes. So I have articles on almost every topic. Well, there's always more, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I have one article on how do you determine your fees. And I don't know if there's 6 or 7 or 8 questions that I consider when answering that question. And one of them is simply do a body check-in, and see what you feel, and what number comes to you. But I don't want you to end just there.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions are, who do you want to serve? Do you want to serve just high-end folks? Do you want to serve more the middle class? Do you want to serve more lower income folks, right? So that's another question, right? And then another question is, where are you at? What life phase are you in? And what are your numbers? Meaning, if you were going to create a little money map right now of 3 tiers, first tier being basic needs, however you define that right now, second tier comfortable, lifestyle needs, however you define that, third tier ultimate. Where are you? What does your where are you at? What phase, what lifestyle are you in? Which one are you wanting to go towards, right? So there's a series of questions like this. It's not just I do ask, like, what are other people charging in your field? Just,
Mm-hmm.
Just as gathering information, right? So there are about 6 to 8 different questions to be asking in this.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm trying to get at is that we may start out serving a certain community so that it pays for a certain lifestyle, right? Even basic needs, or let's say it's meeting our comfortable lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
And then if we really want to create programs, that's where, for example, the way I do it is I have my private financial therapy clients, which I don't open those slots too often, but that's $250. That's what I consider my high-end price point, right, in my funnel here. Then what I do consider middle, I know pricing is all relative, but my year-long program, $88 a month, right, $1,056 for the year, right, for a year-long program. Then I have tons of free content, and then now we have a book that's, was $12 on Amazon. I think it's $15. In the bookstore, it's $22. Mm-hmm. So over the years, I've always been looking at, do I have programs to meet people at different price points so I can serve all different levels and kinds of folks at all different income levels coming from all different economic backgrounds? So for me, that's where I'm looking at the business model. When you're in private practice, there's not that much flexibility around what you can do. And yes, you did answer your own question around having 2 sliding scale, options or slots for people, which is wonderful. This has to serve you, but also you may want to, keep your private clients and then start creating a program that's for, a different economic level of folks. And maybe that's tons of free content. Maybe that is a much lower price program. That's where, like, within, you can help me here, Annie, but like in a therapist framework where you see clients and you only have so many slots and you only have so much time, right? Within that, do you have any other suggestions on how to serve more people besides sliding scale? Or would you go with my suggestions of, which is what I've done, is created a group program, that's at a much lower price point? Or
Yeah. I mean, I think everything you said is absolutely right. And it's like about going with your superpowers and looking at if this is really important to you, which it does seem to be to the person asking the question, then yeah, getting really creative and looking at who do you really want to serve? And, when you're talking about these folks who you really want to serve and you're not able to serve right now, getting really creative and looking at, like, do you want to create, what kind of content would you want to create? Do you want to create a podcast? Do you want to create some kind of large group program like Bari mentioned? Do you want to raise your fee so that you can really have some very low slots, and then when you're serving people who can afford it, you're charging more than you're charging now? So really just open it up and get creative and find your answer from this place that Bari's opening up of really, instead of feeling so constricted, to open it up and really look at it and step into what would feel joyful and still meet your needs.
Yeah, let me say two more things about that,
Yeah.
because therapy model, we are serving middle class to higher.
Mm-hmm.
In a private practice, that's what we need to charge so that we can eat good food and pay for rent or mortgage, especially if we're living in a city, or even consider getting any self-care for ourselves, right? So we are serving middle class or beyond if we're doing private therapy, right? If we have a private practice. So that's where we have to consider lower priced group programs. Or one of the things that I used to do, and I can't remember the name of the program, but it was when I lived in the Bay Area. That's where I started all of my work. And I donated free time to an organization that was helping lower income women start their own businesses. And it was all different kinds of businesses. And many were artists and some even were therapists. And it was all kinds of businesses. But I would give free talks and a little bit of free consulting to that organization. And that was one of the ways that I was able to donate and give and serve people from different economic backgrounds and different, income levels at the time. So I think it is inherent to private practice, though, that unless we're living, I don't know, in the country or in the mountains or somewhere really simple where we can do work on Skype or something and then we can charge less. But for the most part, if we have a private practice, we are serving middle class or higher, right? Isn't that how it goes? Right. So then we need to create a book, lower price programs, tons of free content, podcasts, as we're saying, to serve more people, or donate our time in organizations.
Yeah, that it doesn't even have to happen within your private practice.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bari. And what is the very best place for people to find you and throw compliments at you?
Anywhere in social media, or just come to my website, which is Bari Tessler, BaritTessler.com. And you can send a note to my team. I have a wonderful team that helps support our community. And there is a blog there with, we put out a new article every 2 weeks or so. We have a podcast, and there is a little mini free 7-day Art of Money course that you can join as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Bari.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Such a pleasure to talk to you.
You too. You too.
Here's an idea to try.
Idea to try.
Begin exploring your own relationship with money a little more deeply. Like Bari said, your relationship with money is multifaceted. The next time you're stepping into an interaction with your money, whether it's just being in the checkout line, paying a bill, or checking your balances online, pause and breathe. Notice what you're experiencing in your body and what's happening with your emotions. You don't necessarily need to change what you're experiencing right away. Just start by slowing down and noticing. Thanks for listening to Therapist Clubhouse. I'm so excited that my 14-week program, The Superpower Method for Therapists, is starting again soon. Registration opens in just a few weeks. If you want to grow your unique and profitable therapy practice with a community of warm-hearted and committed therapists, this is for you. Go to coachingwithannie.com and click on The Superpower Method to learn more and get on the wait list. Folks on the wait list will be notified before anyone else when registration opens. See you next week.